Hey, what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. I'm Fielding Shredder. Joining me in the shop today is Turner with SPL Parts, and a good friend of mine and the lead engineer for all their beautiful parts. I've been sponsored by SPL for many years and running their products with great success, but I don't want this to be a commercial. This is more just going to be an informative video for you guys at home to understand some of the design elements that goes into these things, why they have, designed them how they have, and I say they, I mean him, because it's really all on Turner, and just some of the choices he makes going through, and we're going to look at a new arm set.
So this is going to be for the 350Z chassis or the G35. They're both the same.
So I've got a project that I'm working on. Luckily, they've come on board. They've been a great supporter, and they're here local in Austin, Texas, and I just love the guys. So Turner is first of all going to teach me all about their product line, and then he's going to show me kind of some of the key differences, and then I'm going to talk him into helping me install them on the car.
So what we have here is, like he said, the full Z33 lineup. Everything's billet construction with our chromoly electroless nickel plated double adjusters.
Ooh,
and our FK rod ends.
Fancy words there.
Nice long rod ends, but what it means, we're using a motorsports grade material that's lightweight and strong for the construction of our arms. We're using a chromoly electroless nickel plated adjuster. The electroless nickel plate gets rid of any corrosion. And then finally the FK rod ends. It's an American made rod end, super high quality. They're gonna last. They're not gonna blow out after your first drift event.
Right.
So here we've got our camber arm, our tow arm. I know this one looks a little bit different. Our traction arm, which nobody knows how to use. I'll teach you. Our front upper arms, our front end links, our front bump steer adjustable tie rod ends, our rear end links, rear upper arm bushings. We've got our front lower control arm bushings, and not pictured, we've got our compression rod bushings.
Okay.
So this is going to be pretty much the full suite for the Z33 chassis.
Nice.
So here we've got our camber arm. Everybody knows what the camber arm is. Everybody knows what it does.
Ew.
A little bit lighter than stock. Really strong construction. Here we have our tow arm. Looks way different here. The tow arm versus the OEM mid-link. The reason you can use this tow arm is if you switch to a true style coilover,
right,
like you have. Otherwise, if you're using what they call a divorce setup, where the spring and the shock are two separate components, you're gonna have to go with our mid-link. The mid-link is not only toe adjustable, but ride height adjustable as well.
Okay,
So you get adjustment in the spring bucket. You will have to purchase an aftermarket spring, though. It uses a 2.5 inch ID spring. If you need any help purchasing the springs, we've got a calculator on the website,
okay,
or you can just give me a call.
Cool.
I can go more into depth on the mid-link later. With the traction arms, nobody knows how to use them.
Yeah.
I'll explain that to you later. This is the arm that sits at an angle at the front of your rear suspension.
Okay.
Goes up to the chassis and hooks onto that stud up front.
Yeah, the one by the subframe, right?
Exactly.
Yeah,
Being able to adjust this adds so much benefit to your setup. Here we've got my pride and joy, one of the first big arms I developed for SPL Parts, the front upper arms. I love these things. Super adjustable. You get an extra degree of caster straight out of the box. You don't have to adjust for that. You're going to be able to easily adjust camber and caster with just this part. We've got your front and rear end links. Those are going to be attached to your sway bar. What they're used for is to eliminate preload. So if you've got ride height adjustment on your car, if you've lowered it, the OEM end links are not going to function as they should. They're going to be the wrong length. So what you want is your sway bar to be 90 degrees from your end link, which should be perpendicular to the ground.
Okay.
That's when everything's going to work the most effectively. And if the car is a different height from one side to the other, which it always is, to be able to get the end link into the arm, you're generally going to have to jack up on the suspension or pull down really hard on the sway bar to shove it in there. That's going to add preload. So the sway bar is just a giant spring. That's all it is. It's just a torsional spring instead of a style that can be compressed.
Right.
If there's preload in it, the car will turn better in one direction than the other. You're not being able to use the sway bar to its full potential. So what you do is you install this at ride height on one side of the car, and then you go around to the other and adjust this little link in the middle so that exactly matches the other side, so you can just slide it in with no force, and then you'll have no preload in your sway bar. Works same front to rear. We provide you with a few extra spacers on the front one
Okay.
for an adjustable sway bar so that everything can be spaced off appropriately.
Nice.
Here we've got our bump steer adjustable tie rod ends. Bump steer is going to be induced anytime you lower the car or change the caster. What bump steer is as the suspension moves through its travel, you get a little bit of a toe change. And it's what, when you lower your car, it's why it follows the lines in the road and gets a little darty. You have to steer all the time instead of just holding it straight.
Right.
With these spacers, you space it off the knuckle. You want to get it parallel to the lower control arm,
Okay.
the pivot points of the lower control arm.
Mm-hmm.
That's a good rule of thumb for eliminating bump steer. It makes a massive difference on how the car feels just going down the road in general, but also at the limit. And finally, the front lower control arm bearings. The reason why these and the rear upper arm bushings are important, you want to get rid of rubber in your suspension. Rubber is the enemy of predictability and consistency.
Yeah.
The reason why rubber is in your suspension is for NVH. All of these arms have rubber bushings at each end. The
NVH is noise, vibration, and harshness.
exactly.
Yeah.
It keeps the road outside, all the noise outside. You got a nice quiet cabin on the inside. That's why they do it. But the issue with them is they deflect and bind.
Okay.
So if you have the full OEM rear suspension on your car and you take the spring off and just have the shock so you can move it up and down, if you have the OEM stuff, you're really gonna have to crank on it to move it up and down. And it's kind of gonna get stuck and you can feel it kind of ratcheting up and down
Okay.
because you're breaking the bind here. There's something clamped down really hard here.
Right.
You don't want to have rubber bind. And also at the limit, when you're pushing the car really hard, these are gonna deflect, they're gonna move. So you're gonna get dynamic changes, and the big issue with that, they're not going to be consistent. So when you're trying to hold the car at the limit, it's gonna wiggle.
Right.
It's not gonna feel the same every time. You move to a rod end at every location, you get rid of the rubber, and it rotates really nicely. It's going to rotate on a fairly frictionless surface, very low friction surface. Each of these bearings is lined with a Teflon liner. These aren't metal on metal bearings like the cheap ones you get from other manufacturers. This is a really nice quality bearing. The Teflon liner, really similar to the stuff that's in your frying pan. A lot thicker. It is a plastic, but it allows up to high temperatures as you see on the
Right.
frying pan. It's a lot thicker than the stuff that you see commercially most of the time. The benefit of it, you get really smooth articulation, so nothing binds, and it kind of cleans itself as it moves through its articulation. They're self-cleaning. We know nobody washes their car enough. You don't have to wash the bottom of your car when these are on.
Maintenance
It
free.
won't-
I like that.
It won't hurt to clean them off occasionally,
Sure.
but it is good to do. Another feature that we have are these rotating clamp assemblies. I know that doesn't seem like a big deal, but if you've ever been underneath a car that the adjustment is not adjustable, and they get stuck where you can't tighten them down when your alignment was perfect, it's the most frustrating thing ever. Being able to pivot these and put them in a location that makes it really easy to work on is key. One thing that I try and focus on whenever I'm designing these arms is to make sure grassroots level guys that are just going to be working on this on some jack stands in a parking lot outside of their auto zone can get to all of these adjustments. You can use 3 tools to adjust this full suspension. You need a 3/16 Allen, either our SPL wrench or a crescent wrench, and for the front up arms, you need a M12 socket.
That's simple.
That's all
Yeah.
that you need to adjust every single arm. And I make sure you can reach all of these adjustments really, really, really easily.
So what he means by that rotating clamp here is, as you're adjusting this, as it's moving in and out, this, for some other brands, doesn't spin independently. So you may get the alignment perfect, and then you go to try and tighten this clamp, and you can't get an Allen in there because a subframe or something's in the way. So in this case, we can rotate the clamp and spin it in any direction, 360, so we can get that clamp down.
Another key thing I want to point out, we use titanium screws. This is why it's our titanium series.
Yeah.
All of our hardware is titanium. Reason being, it's incredibly lightweight. But one thing I want to make note of, we say in our instructions, tighten these to 150 inch-pounds maximum. Inch-pounds.
Yeah.
Not foot-pounds.
Not foot-pounds.
That's about 12 foot-pounds. But really, what I want you to do is tighten these as good as you can with an Allen key. until you can't move these at all. You don't need to stick a big wrench on it to see if it'll move. Nothing's trying to twist these arms. Most of the force that these arms are ever going to see is a compressive or tensive force. So it's either trying to crush the arm or pull it apart. Nothing's trying to rotate them really.
I also noticed too, so we've got an aluminum arm and a chromoly steel, a double adjuster going inside. And typically, you know, when you have steel threaded into aluminum, you have the tendency or potential to gall up. They've got all of them lined. Well, first of all, you said this is nickel coated.
Yep.
And then it's also got some anti-seize in there. So, you know, they're ready to go right out of the box, and you don't have to worry about that one little particular feature as you're adjusting these. And as they get water and slush and salt and from grime from the road, good to go, right?
Yep. I have seen arms that have been on cars for years that still have the anti-seize on there. We put a ton of it on there just to make sure you're never going to have any issues. It's not a bad idea if you are in a snowy environment to get rid of any salt that's on them.
Yeah.
Salt is the enemy of
Everything.
corrosion resistance. It's really hard. We do what we can to prevent any corrosion, like the electroless nickel plating, like the anodizing we do, which is why we can have the dissimilar metals. But salt is a bit hard to account for, so that's the only time there is any maintenance on these. I would suggest washing them off a little bit if you're in a really, really, really salty environment.
Yeah.
Otherwise, they're pretty much maintenance free. I've got them on my car. I don't have to worry about them.
Yeah.
But we're in
They've
Texas.
been on my car for years, and you know
the
me,
benefit
I don't
of
ever
living in
mess with them.
Texas.
Yeah, true, that's true. And I mean, this is a hard anodized too, so that's going to prevent the aluminum from getting any kind of corrosion or
Exactly.
anything like that.
And it is a 6061 T6, which is pretty corrosion resistant to begin with.
Okay.
Never really seen any corrosion whatsoever on the arms themselves.
Cool.
Occasionally we'll see some on either the rod end or the double adjuster in really salty environments.
I see.
But if you can keep them clean, it helps. Try not to chip off the electroless nickel plating. Another nice thing is these are lifetime arms. If any of this rusts, we sell all these components individually if you need them. We keep them all in stock at all times.
Nice.
So that if you do have a bearing that's going out or you lose something, we have something to replace it with. It can be shipped out the exact same day you place the order.
So essentially, once you're part of the SPL family, you can have, you know, worry-free and nearly maintenance-free, and then if you ever have issues, then just a phone call away to get all of the replacement parts.
These are going to last 4 to 5 years. Rod ends are a wear component. The Teflon liner on the inside, after a while, will get beaten out. It is plastic. It's a very strong, smooth, hard plastic, but it's still plastic. So after time, you'll get a little bit of play in the rod end, and you'll be able to hear it. Generally, for street driving, that's 4 to 5 years, and you can generally get about 2 track seasons out of pretty much every single component, if not more.
Okay.
We've had people run 25-hour endurance races multiple times on a single set of arms with no issue. Some arms wear a little bit quicker than others, but most everything on this chassis is going to last 4 to 5 years before you have to replace anything, and the rod ends really aren't that bad. If you need to replace every single rod end on your chassis, which rarely ever happens, the only time people do that is the big motorsports teams, really just for replacements. You're going to spend less than $200 to replace every single rod end, and it's all going to be like new. The anodized arms themselves, they're a lifetime component. You're not going to break them. Nothing's going to happen to these that you're going to need to replace them.
Nice. Well, dude, this is amazing and definitely eye-opening to see all the little design elements that go into it. I know you mentioned about the windowing on the arm here. You said that's for lightweight but strength, right?
Yes.
So there's always a balance between
Lightweight
strength and weight.
strength. We want to be as light as possible, but we always want you to be safe.
Of course.
We could make these a bit lighter, for sure. I've checked the FEA, and there is some weight I could take out of these, but I don't know what kind of loads you're actually going to put on them, what potholes you're going to hit, what other wheels you may hit,
other
under
drivers.
circumstances. We don't want arms to fail. That's the last thing we want. So they're a little bit stronger than they need to be, but it's so that they last. Everything SPL is meant to last. No! Another key thing that I want to let our customers know is how to properly adjust the double adjuster. It's super important, and I get pictures and tech questions all the time showing people doing it incorrectly. You want to hold the rod end and just adjust from the double adjuster when it's fully shortened. That way, it reaches our maximum adjustment length for each component at the same time instead of individually. So if you adjust this out, our maximum is 3/4 of an inch of exposed thread on the double adjuster and 5/8 of an inch of exposed thread on the rod end. That is a safe thread engagement for our parts. And if you adjust out from the double adjuster, you're going to reach both those at the same time.
Okay.
You don't want to put it on your car with your rod end exposed a lot more than your double adjuster. You're losing out on adjustment range, and you're compromising the strength of the part. It was designed so that you have 3/4 of an inch and 5/8 of an inch at its maximum.
Okay. That's all in the instructions too, right? So if you guys forget.
It is in
when
the
you buy it.
instructions, but everyone messes that one up.
Right.
Another thing you can do is extend some of these parts. If you do need that stance camber, we have things to provide that for you. Just give us a phone call. I'm up at the office all the time. I'm happy to answer any of your technical questions. Give me a call at any time.
You say that now, but then I call him constantly, and he's like, "Hey."
I'm always
No,
happy
he's
to
always
hear
been
from
so
you.
nice.
Front upper arms, super easy to adjust. 12mm sockets to adjust both of the double adjusters on the car. 6 blue titanium socket head cap screws. Super easy to use. You can, depending on your wheels, adjust this while they're on the car.
Nice.
Up to 4.5, almost 5 degrees of camber, depending on your ride height, and you can also get to positive. But like I said, more caster than stock available.
Yeah, just a little bit, like 1 degree more than stock, which is good. So you actually want that. So that's good. Sweet, man. Well, I've definitely learned a lot. This is very eye-opening. I appreciate all of your insight and all of your design cues that go into it. You got anything else you want to add to it?
The one thing that a lot of people are always concerned about is NVH, and these really aren't that bad. As long as everything's installed correctly and you keep the rod ends near the middle of their articulation when you install it and everything's tightened down appropriately, you're not really going to add a bunch of NVH. As long as you have a good set of shocks on your car, these aren't going to drastically increase the amount of road noise you're going to hear.
Yeah, I can legitimately vouch for that because these are on my car, remember, and I just did 3,000 plus street miles in my car for Drift Week, and it was fine. I mean, it was quiet enough. The differential was way louder than anything else on the car.
Exactly.
I have good shocks, some BC Racing shocks and springs, and then SPL arms. Definitely a hell of a successful combination.
Definitely. I mean, I run them on my car all the time, and obviously I work for SPL, so I'm going to say that, you know, it doesn't make a difference, but it really does not make a big difference in the noise or the way the car feels on a regular street. Mm-hmm. Once you're pushing it, that's when you get to see the full benefit of the parts.
Nice. Well, dude, thank you so much for taking some time out to come out here and educate us all on this. Hopefully you guys all at home learned something yourself. Make sure you guys subscribe to the channel and check out SPL Parts. I've got a lot of cool racing stuff and drifting stuff on their website and their social medias and whatnot. And one thing I want to say is just a huge thank you to these guys. You know, they are local here in Texas. This is 100% American-made stuff, which is fantastic. But more than anything, they are a racing branded company. This is a motorsport part that is for race cars, but they don't hate drifting. That's something that I think, you know, that's near and dear to my heart, because a lot of racing companies and brands and minds hate drifting, or they think it's dumb. And I mean, honestly, it is pretty dumb, but it's like the best kind of dumb, the most fun dumb you can have. And it's really cool that a company like this has been supportive of drifters, myself and many others. And you know, you'll actually see SPL parts on Pro Drift cars, Formula D cars, even ones without the SPL sticker. The Formula D drivers buy them because they know that this is a lasting product that's gonna not break. And a failure on the track is so much more expensive than the couple $100 extra it might cost to buy this over the competitors. And even some drivers, I'll be honest, are sponsored by one brand and they run these on their car with the other brand stickers, and sometimes even spray paint these a different color. You didn't hear that from me, but yeah, it happens. And so just trust that the quality of the product is definitely more important than anything else, I think. All right.
And I forgot, you are getting the big baller ones.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say, like, I wasn't expecting these. I was thinking you have a chromoly version.
We do have
which
a
is
chromoly version.
less
So
expensive.
We created the billet version so we can move everything in-house.
Okay.
We want everything to be made in our own facility
Okay.
with CNC lathes. We're still working towards that. Right now, everything's manufactured in Austin, Texas, in outside machine shops. But eventually, we want to bring everything in-house. The big thing is the chromoly stuff, for guys like you, is repairable at the track.
Right.
More so
Which
than
I've
these,
done.
but these are much less likely to break.
Right.
And even though you have a wonderful track record for not hitting anything, I thought I'd give you the strongest stuff
Yeah,
available.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. All right, guys, thanks again for joining in, and I appreciate you tuning in. I hope that you learned something. Thanks to Turner, huge thanks. Thank you very much, and I'm gonna try and strong arm him into helping me install them now. So make sure you guys like, comment, subscribe, all that YouTube stuff, and we'll see you on the next one.